Hello, everyone. Every single one of you. This is Unfound Live for December 22nd of 2025. This is the Christmas episode. And what that means by that, what that means is I'm wearing a Santa hat. That's the Christmas edition. So I have a fantastic show planned for you tonight. Not really Christmas themed really in any way, once again, except for me wearing this Santa hat on screen. If you can see me, of course, for all of you that will partake in this as a podcast tomorrow, well, you're going to miss that. This is why you should tune in on Monday nights. I got my Santa hat on. I actually wore it out when I went out. Was it yesterday or maybe Saturday? Actually wore it out and went over to a local Starbucks and wore my hat over there while I was doing work, like I said, on Saturday. And then I drove around and looked at Christmas lights and everything. Once again, with my Christmas hat on, me by myself, me 55 years old, single guy, no kids. And here I am cruising around with a Santa hat on. If there is, I don't know if there's a better way to explain who I really am inside. As you are watching tonight, please give this show a thumbs up. You can do that in a variety of locations, wherever you may be watching. And if you are on YouTube right now and you are watching for the first time, you've never heard of Unfound before, just looking around and wow, there's a live show on a Monday night, please consider hitting the subscribe button there. Please hit the like button, share it with anybody that you think might enjoy it. You can support Unfound through a variety of ways: Patreon, PayPal, the Super Chat button you can hit while you are in the chat tonight. And then also, if you are on YouTube, you can hit the join button and you can get some things that no other people will get. And yes, I do plan to do an Unfound now. In fact, I've already picked each disappearance out for Found and Unfound. Now, those episodes will get done toward the end of this month. As you can see in the title, what is the guarantee? Anybody who's been around long enough knows. The guarantee is anything that is in the title of the show will get featured during the next 2 hours. So I'm going to talk about the disappearance of Diane Suzuki. Not sure how many of you know about her disappearance, but it caught my eye in Hawaii, and I'll tell you why that happened once I get to that. That's a disappearance that is over 40 years old. Happened way back in 1985. And I want to analyze it. It seems to be there is something within the accounting of that disappearance is wrong. There seems to be contradictory information. Also want to talk about what happened at Brown University and in conjunction with what also happened to an MIT professor. Of course, murders that happened at both locations and just some weird thing that I noticed within all of that. And then, as I usually do, when there is a plane crash that catches a lot of people's attention, like, of course, earlier this year when we had the helicopter run into that commercial airline that was landing in Washington, D.C. Of course, I talked about that. Then much more recently when that UPS jet crashed right after takeoff, devoted some time to that. Well, I want to talk about the crash that killed Greg Biffle, a NASCAR driver, and his wife and children, and some other people who were on that private jet. Very much like the UPS crash just after takeoff, although this jet, Greg was in flight for about 10 minutes. Of course, the UPS flight was only in flight for about 30 seconds or something. So I've been following that, and being that I know a lot of you look to me when it comes to these plane crashes, even though there's some very reputable coverage out there on YouTube, but you may not know those people, don't follow those channels like I do. You come to me to talk about that as well, not just disappearances. I have an extensive catalog in my head of plane crashes. So I will try to do my best to update all of you on the Greg Biffle crash and what you should be looking for if that is catching your attention in the news. So I guarantee you I will get to all those topics, and hopefully I will get to some other things as well. Let's go see who is in the chat right now. Hello, Amy. Amy gets in first. Pookley gets in second. Mary is third. Hello, Lisa. What's going on with you? Hello, Husa. Hello, Ed and everyone. Hello, Dee. What's going on with you? And she says hi to the chat. Jojo, Ed's Christmas special. Yeah, Christmas. It's his Christmas special in that I'm wearing a Santa hat. Hat looks good on me. Thank you. I appreciate that. I actually got this hat right before I went out to Greeley, Colorado to film that TV show 2 years ago. Some of you remember that, when I went out there and got involved. And of course, that came out as a series on, what was it, the Oxygen Network. I got this hat shortly before I went out there, and wore this hat on the plane and everywhere else while I was going around out there, and wore it to Pennsylvania. And you can actually see some on my private Facebook page. You can see some of the pictures I took of myself in the airport wearing this hat. So this hat is a little over 2 years old. Haley, Merry Christmas to you. Dr. J, hello. DD, Derek, what's going on? Merry Christmas to you, Derek. ER, hello. Hello, Laura. Yeah, it has been a while. Where you been? In Homosassa, Florida. I know where that is, Laura. Good to see you. Sarah, with the little green and red hearts. It's Brian. Hello, Brian. That's Brian. And Haley, great year, friend. Fun. Thank you, Haley. It's very kind of you for the congratulations. Thank you very much. A lot of work. It's been an interesting year, and I'm going to be talking more about what is going on this year when we get to this Friday's episode as we finish out the year. But thank you, Haley. Really appreciate it. As for me, what has gone on since we all got together a week ago? Of course, this past Friday was the last disappearance episode for the year. Many of you know that we always finish the year with the update episode. So update episode number 22, I'll talk about that, of course, right at the end. So we closed the book on disappearances featured for 2025. Also, what's going on is I went to trivia twice since we last got together. Last Wednesday really didn't mean much. My team wasn't in the playoffs. We missed it by 3 points, an agonizing 3 points, I might add. And we got the final question right, but I would not say we didn't finish in the top 3. Well, like I said, it really didn't mean anything. We took some chances that we normally would have not have taken, and it cost us, but we did get the final question right. So that was my team on Wednesday that I played with for the entire season, except for, of course, a couple weeks I went to see my dad. And then on Saturday, I played with the other people that I play with over at a place called Sharks. And we totally got our butts kicked on Christmas trivia. I mean, you talk about not good. We got to just stick to regular trivia. geography and history and science and sports and everything. The Christmas trivia, we did not good. So luckily that only happens once a year. It was a good time. It was good seeing them. I had not seen them for a while, even well before I went up to see my dad. And Dad's doing good, by the way. I've talked to him almost every day since I came back. Talked to him today. He is doing fine. We must have talked on the phone for like 45 minutes or something like that today. So he's all good, staying warm up there in Pennsylvania. And he's been invited a couple different places for Christmas. And I'm happy to hear that. So Christmas trivia, not good. In fact, we missed the final question, finished very poorly. So we'll try to start better next year. But you might find this Christmas party story kind of funny. I think I told you last Monday that my building where I live, this complex that I live in, the Crescent Beach Club here in Clearwater Beach, which is just south of the Sandkey Park. You can look it up on a map. If you do, I live in the only buildings that aren't rectangles. The buildings are a little curved, and there's two different buildings and they almost touch. And the party was in my building down on the second floor. It's the lobby. It's like the second floor lobby. Usually I park on the first floor. So the second floor is like where the mailroom is, where the gym is, where the pool room is, where the library is. There is actually a big meeting room there that they sometimes use. They've used for New Year's Eve parties. So yeah, my building has all those things. But this was just like right out in the general area. And there was quite a few people there. That was last Tuesday evening. And the party started at 6. I didn't go down to about 20 to 7. And I almost missed out on the food. First of all. Man, those people can eat. There must have been at least 60 people there. And like I said, the food was just about gone when I got there. I think I was certainly almost the last person to show up. I was thinking that it might take a little while. I never want to get there, like geek it up and get there early. So I always want to be fashionably late. That's how I used to do all the parties at Star Trek too. And I think I just picked too late of a time this time. Anyway, I go down there and you have to understand, I do kind of stick out like a little bit of a sore thumb. I would say the average age of the people at this party was probably 70. There was a few kids there, maybe with their grandparents. You have a lot of older people that live in this building or are down here for the winter in this building. There's not too many people living in this building, around my age or younger. Maybe for a lot of different reasons. And on top of that, so I'm one of the youngest people at this party, even though I'm 55. Hello, Michelle. What's going on? You're allowed to be late. I'm not allowed to be late. Of course, I was on time this week. I was late last week because of doing the interview that all of you ended up seeing or hearing. So not only am I showing up there late, and I'm just about one of the youngest people at the party. And like I said, the average age of these people is well above my age. But, I show up, as is usually the situation. I'm just all in black. I got the long hair. I mean, I really, really stick out. Now, they don't know my person. Of course, I'm a lot less intimidating than I look. I think that you can certainly get that idea from watching this live show. But I went and got food was left, and I sat down. And there was some older woman there who started giving me a hard time. I've run into this woman before. I don't know what is up with her. She's just weird. But for some reason, every time there's some gathering or something, or I run into this woman and she always says like the weirdest things. I really want to get into it. But I ended up talking to this older guy, and it turned out I think he was in his early 70s. I think he was around like my siblings' ages, which is like early 70s. And he was a retired heart surgeon. Hello, fishing. What's going on? He was a retired heart surgeon. And he eventually, of course, when people see me, and this is how, although I'm taking singing lessons and those lessons are going pretty well, pretty well. I know I haven't talked about it much, but every Friday I have my lesson. It's going fine, getting better. But as you would imagine, a lot of people see me and they don't think true crime podcast, or they don't think disappearance expert. They don't think guy who has done lectures at school, schools, presentations at colleges and everything. They see hard rocker, which I kind of am, but amateur in my condo. So this guy gets around to asking me what I do. And I said, well, I'm a missing persons expert. I've spoken at colleges here in Florida. I do this podcast called Unfound. I've been doing this for 9 years. I've testified in a murder trial. And I just kind of got the idea that this guy wasn't buying it, to be honest. Very nice guy. Perfectly fine, nice guy. Had a very pleasant conversation with him. I have no complaints. But I could tell, because I'm used to talking to people about this. And I could just tell he was like, really? Really? So look, this true story. Luckily, what happened that very same day, last Tuesday, that article about me came out on aetv.com, the A&E television channel website. Hopefully all of you have gone and read it. I posted it all over the place. It came out the same day. And, I'm looking and I'm like, I don't think this guy is believing me. He's not believing me that I've testified in this trial and that I do these things and I've covered 390 disappearances. I don't know. He might think, and looking at me and I'm here by myself and all of this, and I'm living in this building, and I really stick out. He's might like some guy off the street. So I get on my phone, I find the article, and I said, the A&E channel, where he goes, oh yeah, I watch A&E. I said, yeah, I'm featured on that website today. And I show him my phone, and all of a sudden it's like the light bulbs go off. And he's like, oh, well, let me take a picture of that so I can check it out when I go back to my condo. Sure, no problem. And so he took a picture of my phone with my picture, and so he could go find it when he went home that night. Whether he did or not, I have no idea. I have to admit, I don't even know what condo he even lives in this complex. And I have to be honest, I even forgot his first name. But all I remember is he was a retired heart surgeon, originally from Iowa, and has been living in this building, in the building for like 4 years. But it's really weird because you can live in like some building like this and hardly ever see other people. So it was just kind of funny. And I started thinking, you know what? Had I not been able to access that A&E interview, I'm thinking that guy still wouldn't have believed me. So it was kind of funny. And then once he saw that, we could have a little bit more of a normal conversation, because I think to that point he thought, it's no different than, some people do this. I, of course, would never do this, but some people show up at parties and they really overinflate their resume and what they're doing in their lives because they're insecure and, they're afraid that people are going to judge them and yada, 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 all the things kind of like what people do when they go to class reunions, whoever goes to class reunions anymore. Oh yeah. I'm like the president of the company. Meanwhile, the person just works in the mailroom or something. I think there's a possibility he thought I was just doing that. And then he saw, I was like, oh, okay. So I'm going to have to remember that I'm going to have to probably save that article and just be able to access it very quickly on my phone for future reference, should I encounter any doubters in the future. By the way, I thought that article was really good. I thank them for doing that. Not sure what kind of, is it going to up the profile of the podcast or something? I have no idea. But I thought the thing that I always am concerned when I do things like that, no different than going up to Greeley 2 years ago or any other interviews that I've ever done about what I do, the work, the disappearances, whatever. I just want to be represented correctly. I don't, even though, for example, talking about the Janelle Matthews coverage from Oxygen Network, Oxygen Channel that came out. Even though I wasn't in that 2-part series, I wasn't in there very long. I have no problem with that as long as however it is edited, that my position, my insights, my knowledge is accurately represented. That's really all I care about. I don't really care about the screen time. So I thought that the woman who interviewed me did a great job. It was very fair, very accurate, and I thank them for that. And once again, just go to AETV, so those letters, AETV.com. And the easiest way is to just do a search. It was on the front page for a few days, but of course they're writing articles all the time. You can find, there's a little search bar up at the top. If you just type in my last name, Densel, it'll come up and you can read it if you've not yet checked it out. Let's see. Greetings, Santa Ed, or is it Ed Kringle? It's just I'll take Santa Ed, Cranky. Thank you. Don't judge a book by its cover. Absolutely true, Brian. And that is yes. So, yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah. And I will admit, that, some people who know me personally, not any of you, but people who know me personally, maybe not my family, but others, because over the years, I've had short hair, of course, like when I started Unfound and everything, but within the last few years, some of them have asked me, well, Ed, what are you doing? And, hair and some of the other things. And I'm like, don't worry. It's all part of the plan, man. Don't worry. It's all part of the plan. And yes, part of the plan is testing the way we all judge people by the way they look. That is one of the tests. Because I continue to aspire to be the most knowledgeable person on disappearances, an expert in that arena. Really, it's not overtly difficult to do because I don't know how many people over the course of history have really devoted their lives to studying disappearances and everything. It's probably been a few people, but of course it's a lot easier now with the internet and everything. But it has occurred to me, how weird is it that somebody who knows all these things about disappearances and everything, looks like this and, and everything else. There is an interesting dichotomy. And yes, I am testing people. I am. But I love it. It's just I think it's it's a very interesting social experiment. But like I said, it's all part of the plan that has to do with things outside of doing the podcast as well. And yes, there is a part of me, because I will admit, one of these days I would like to, get up in front of a bunch of police officers and talk to them about disappearances, and talk to them, of course, from a position of knowledge and experience. And they are forced, quote unquote, forced to listen to me. And all of them with their crew cuts have to listen to a guy who looks like me. I'm going to enjoy that greatly. Women too, whoever, women police officers as well. So I just think it's a kind of very interesting dynamic there. I don't know. I find it fascinating. Sean says, I love the hat. Thank you, Sean. It fits perfectly. I got this at my local Publix a couple years ago, and just perfect fit. Perfect fit there. Like it. All right. So that's what's been going on with me. So I had to talk with this heart doctor. Like I said, good guy, but I think he was a big doubter in me until I could prove who I was. Let's now, of course, we have about an hour and a half to go. So let's just get right to, well, maybe I need to say a couple things also before I start in on my analysis of the disappearance of Diane Suzuki. Also this past week, what day was it that myself and Lisa Kassoon finally got together? Man, I think it's been 2 years. Lisa goes way, way back, almost to the beginning of Unfound. She was the guest. Her brother's Chip Campbell. He went missing up there in the panhandle of Florida. He is still missing. And Lisa and I have become very, very good friends. I think maybe some of you remember that, over the past, she was on this in podcast in 2017. I would say that we've gotten together once a year since then, although it's been a couple years, I think, since the last time I saw her. And so we got together at this new the Seafood place that neither of us had gone to before, about half hour north of me, because she lives like a half hour the other direction. She lives like an hour and 20 minutes from me. So we got together. Unfortunately, her husband could not join us because he was sick. I'm a big fan of Lisa's husband. Like that guy a lot. Good guy. Fun guy. Funny guy. Like him a lot. Unfortunately, he was a little bit sick. Couldn't show up. So we had a really nice lunch. Sat there, just talked for a couple hours. Some of you, if you were in the discussion group on Facebook, saw the picture of me and Lisa together. So we did a lot of talking about, of course, a lot about Chip, about disappearances and things, but we talked about a lot of different stuff. So, and the food was very good. The place was called Molly Goodheads. I'm not making that up. So there's like, there was a character in what movie or whatever, Holly Goodhead. Well, this was Molly Goodhead. I'm not here, to get into the titling of somebody's restaurant, but that's what it was called. So Lisa and I got together, and we had a really good time, and we just couldn't believe it's been that long. Let's see here what everybody. Love the hat. Oh, hello, Rockford. I was hoping for the elf costume callback from last week. Yeah, from my story from last week. Yeah, you're not going to be seeing that, Rockford. Yeah, that not going to happen. Of course, me, I'm just a talking head on here anyway. And I think going back to my story from last week, I really don't think it had much to do with what was going on from like the shoulders up, going back to that story from 1988. So there's that. But hello, Rockford. How you doing? Cranky. Oh, and for whoever needs to hear this, go Bears. Oh, no. Yeah, my Steelers pulled it out yesterday. Looks like they're going to the playoffs. Unbelievable. Charles, good evening. I'm late. Crazy evening at the restaurant. Good to see you, though. Hello, nephew Charlie. What's going on? I think I'm going to be seeing Uncle Brian for Christmas, I think. All right, now that I've talked about one of my favorite guests on the podcast, Lisa, let's now get to Diane Suzuki, S-U-Z-U-K-I. I just like the motorcycle company. I came upon her disappearance. I'm going to be very honest about this. And sometimes it's not very tricky and on how these things go. But being that the database, the reference guide is up and running, I'm hoping that many of you have checked it out so far. The links are out there. When you have some spare time, you can get in there and mess around with all the different categories, checking some, not checking others. Of course, now I have the how-to video that is up there on the YouTube channel as well. But there are still some states where Unfound is not yet covered disappearances. Even though it's been 9 years and 380, almost 390 disappearances, there are still a few states that have not been featured. Hawaii is one of them. Even though I did a Unfound Now from Hawaii, not done an actual Friday episode for any disappearance from Hawaii for whatever reason. So this past week in preparing for this live show, I was like, well, let's see what's going on with disappearances in Hawaii. Are there any of these disappearances that have Facebook pages or whatever else? Sometimes that's just the way it works. And in fact, another state that Unfound has not yet visited is Connecticut. And in fact, supposed to do it today. Didn't happen today. Maybe we'll get it done tomorrow. Supposed to be talking to the daughter of a guy who went missing in Connecticut. Because once again, not featuring any disappearance in Connecticut. So once again, I just went to a list of Connecticut disappearances, kind of a combo between Charlie Project and Amos, and started looking at them and see, are any of these people, any family members doing any media out there? Because I would like to cover disappearances in all 50 states, and maybe that needs to be done. Given that we're 300 some in and we still haven't gotten to all 50 states, it's a little weird. So I'm going to see if we can fix that in 2026. So this is how I came across Diane Suzuki's disappearance, by looking at Hawaii disappearances. And what you're going to hear is this is a disappearance that seems to have some contradictory information. There's something within all of this that's not true. I'm not necessarily saying anybody's lying or there's anything like that, but I think you'll see what I mean once I start going through this. And I'm guessing that maybe, even though I've talked about some very well-known disappearances and analyzed them on this live show starting kind of this past summer, this is probably a disappearance that not many of you know, maybe for the only reason that it's in Hawaii and it was 40 years ago. So just keep that in mind. So I'm guessing a lot of this is going to be very new to you. Rockford was in Vegas this weekend. Sneaky trip. Sorry to miss the tank. We missed you, Rockford. Cranky, my wife is a diehard Bears fan. Futures bet on them to win the Super Bowl. Best of luck to you and us. Might have a chance. It's not a horrible bet, Rockford. That's not too bad. Dr. J, I forgot to thank you for doing the interview with the family in Marshall, Texas a while back. I was reviewing that case, and that is how I found your channel. Unfortunately, given that I've covered so many disappearances, you will have to remind me of what disappearance is. That Deanna Merrifield. Which disappearances? I'm usually pretty good with some of these things, but on the spot, it's a little difficult. Oh, Bain. Oh, yeah. Right. Little Joe. Yes. Little Joe Bain. Yes. Of course. Yeah. He was there with a couple, and I think they might have had one of them might have had their mother there, and they said that he walked off. He said not to wait up for him, and he walked off. Yeah. See, it's all coming back. Frederick, yeah. Little Joe, yes. And I think it was his sister, right? Called him Little Joe. Yeah. All right, Dr. J, thank you. Well, you're welcome. Hopefully you got something out of it. And if you're going to be reviewing it for your own work or whatever, good luck to you. I hope you, that's certainly a disappearance that needs solved. So Diane Suzuki, I'm going to read, did go and read some articles on this, but I'm going to read most of the Charlie Project page on this, and there is a lot more than that to this disappearance. Diane was last seen on July 6th, 1985, so 40 and a half years ago. She was seen outside of the Rosalie Woodson Institute of Dance in AIEA, Hawaii. That dance place is still there, where she was employed as a part-time children's dance instructor. The class she was teaching ended at 3 p.m., and at 3:15, her friends started looking for her, and I'll tell you why. She was never heard from again. So class ends at 3. She already goes missing at 3:15. Her car's in the parking lot, never to be seen again in daytime. Like I said, now you're probably saying, now we see why this disappearance caught Ed's attention. Suzuki left her purse, keys, and car at the dance studio. Of course, the car is in the parking lot. I don't think her purse and keys were in the car. I think that they were still inside the building. I think. She was a student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa at the time of her disappearance. Foul play is suspected in her disappearance. Some blood evidence, which I will talk about later, was found in the bathroom of the dance school, and police suspected an acquaintance of Suzuki's, a photographer at the dance school, was involved in her case. But you should know nobody's ever been charged. Nobody's been arrested. I think this person might have been given a lie detector test and might have failed it. It's still unsolved. She's still missing. Nobody's ever gone to jail. Nothing. This guy failed a polygraph test shortly after her disappearance, was never charged for lack of evidence. A prosecutor attempted to reopen Suzuki's case in 1993, so 8 years later, but it remains unsolved. Her family had a memorial service for her in 1997, 12 years later. Suzuki's mother died in 1998, 13 years later. Her father is still alive, but in his 80s. I don't know if he's alive now. And they're still hoping for answers. She has multiple sisters, and I am in the process of trying to reach out to them. I would love to talk to one of them. One of them, of course, to come on and officially talk about Diane's disappearance. So what was going on that day? I can expound on this, given that I've read some actual articles that were written in Hawaii back in 1985. Is that the plan was her class ended at 3. There was some friends, including a girl, so that was just like 15. They were showing up at 3:15 to meet Diane, and they were all going to go to some gathering party somewhere, at a house, another building, a business, a party that wasn't there. They were going to have to go somewhere else. And the plan was for them to meet up with Diane at 3:15 and then all go together. I don't know if they were going to go in somebody else's car, different cars, Diane's car. I don't know. What's important to know, though, is that there was a 15-minute window. That's it. That's it. In the daytime, in a building that was it was kind of like, you almost might call it a strip mall. So it wasn't like a standalone dance studio building. It was a little store building connected to another building that was something else that was connected to something else. So there's people in all these other buildings. In addition, Diane, where she was teaching dance, I think the dance studio was 2 floors. The class she held that day was on the 2nd floor. And of course, you can only access it from the 1st floor. Now you're probably, once again, you're saying, now we're seeing why this caught Ed's attention. So she's up there giving these dance classes, this dance class till 3 on the 2nd floor. 15 minutes later, nobody ever sees her again. Crazy. Certifiably. Tough. So Diane's car was in the parking lot where they found it there, where it was usually parked. Doesn't seem like there was anything unusual there. The door wasn't open, a window wasn't down, there wasn't any violence there like we saw with like Jody Huisentruit. Nothing like that. It was just sitting there, parked. No big deal. This is where, though, it gets, like I said, a little contradictory. Now, remember, and I'm going to get to the blood more in depth, but eventually, and blood wasn't found at the time, it was found years later. But eventually, some blood was found in the bathroom, and it looked like somebody had tried to clean something up. The issue, though, is there was a witness who allegedly saw Diane walking down the street from the dance studio after 3 o'clock. So there's blood in this bathroom, but she's seen walking down the street from the dance studio. And we only have a 15-minute window. That sounds contradictory to me. It does. I think you have to agree with me. Once again, what'd she do? Go back down in the course of 15 minutes, finished her class, walked down the street, came back, went back up to the 2nd floor, got murdered. Somebody took her out all in 15 minutes. It seems unlikely. And so I am going to try to give you my best idea of what I think happened here, but it's well documented. Somebody saw her walking to a local store. Or walking down the street towards some other stores. And I want to remind you, where she was working that day on the 2nd floor, you could only get to the 2nd floor from the inside of the building. In addition, this even makes it even more difficult. There was another woman in the dance studio at the time on the 1st floor. This woman did not report seeing anybody or hearing anything. In fact, it seems like she was very open. Nobody suspects she had anything to do with Diane's disappearance. But it's very clear from the articles that I read that she was in the downstairs on the 1st floor, maybe giving a class of her own. I don't know. But Diane was on the 2nd floor. So they weren't working together. But she was there. As far as the blood, now that I want to talk about the blood a little bit. At the time in 1985, the bathroom that was right off that dance studio on the 2nd floor, I don't think anything, was done forensically with it. Probably what happened was at the time, they just gave it a casual view. Well, no violence in here. And just left it be. It wasn't until years later, I think even into the 90s, like at least 5 years later, that for some reason, they went in and did forensics on that bathroom and started to see like little blood splatters here that were not obvious to the naked eye. And in addition, the police made the determination that maybe somebody had cleaned something up. Now, what should also be noted, though, is at the time in 1985, there was no mention of any violence or blood or anything being seen in the dance studio itself. So somehow, if this is Diane's blood, it was only in the bathroom and not anywhere else. The problem, and I really, really, really tried to find this, there's nothing in the last, since 35 years ago, since this blood was discovered there, there's nothing saying that it is Diane's blood. Now, of course, we know 1990 was kind of a little early for DNA. For me, I start thinking about solid, reliable DNA work starting in the mid-90s, kind of like how I put like the internet starting for the public and DNA kind of around the same time. And it doesn't seem like if they've done DNA on this blood that was found, if there was enough of it, that it's ever been connected to Diane. Maybe it has been, and it's just not public, but there's nothing public about that. But I think that the reason, as I read in the Charlie Project, that they were thinking about bringing charges against this guy who failed this polygraph test, who was a photographer or whatever. I think it was going to be on the basis of that. And they went in there, found that blood. Oh, we have proof of a crime. Well, that never happened. So like I said when I started, there is some contradictory stuff here. Somebody sees her walking down the street away from the dance studio, but at the same time, there was blood in this bathroom. Well, it all can't be true. And if it's Diane's blood, it might be somebody else's. And we have to remember, this is a dance studio. How many times do people get bloody in a dance studio? Well, you get a class in there and people are kicking their legs. Somebody might get kicked in the face. That's not totally crazy. Or somebody might try to do a flip and hit the floor and bust their nose and go into the bathroom. Of course, there would be blood in there. Blood would be everywhere. Pretty ugly. There could be a lot of different reasons that blood would be in the bathroom of a dance studio, but you don't find any blood out in the dance studio itself. Dance, it's beautiful. Of course, living in Las Vegas, working in entertainment, I knew a lot of dancers and not the stripper type. I knew some strippers, but most of the dancers that I knew were actually professional, experienced, real dancers, like with ballet and all sorts of experience, official dancing. And you realize, they can have injuries, they pull muscles, it can be very dangerous, certainly. So it's not crazy to me as a guy with an entertainment background that you might have, of course, men take dance too, that you might have a situation where an injury happens and you have to go into the bathroom to wipe things up. And plus, like I said, we don't know if it's Diane's blood or not. Important to remember. So like I said, unclear if it's Diane's. In addition, though, so we have this story, though, about her being out in the street by herself. Now, remember, though, Key's purse found back at the building. So if she was walking down the street, why was she doing that without her purse and keys and her keys? Of course, then we have to start calling into question, was this witness really telling the truth? Was it even Diane at all? Was it the right day? Questions we often ask in all sorts of disappearances, not just ones from 40 years ago, but even ones that happened within the last few years that have been featured on Unfound. Did these people see what they really saw? Was it the right day? Are they just making stuff up? But we have another witness account who says that Diane was outside talking to a guy next to a Volkswagen, like a Volkswagen Bug, I think. And the Volkswagen had very distinct colors. In fact, it might have even been some sort of two-tone. And this witness said that it was at about 3:05 p.m. that day. And you can even, once again, if you want to do a Google search for Diane Suzuki, you can even see sketches of this guy. This guy has never been identified, and he does not match the description of the guy who, like I already read, was a just to read what Megan at the Charlie Project wrote, there was a photographer at the dance school, and the police suspected an acquaintance of Suzuki's, a photographer at the dance school, was involved in this case, and he failed a polygraph test shortly after disappearance, was never charged for lack of evidence. His description of what this photographer looks like, and the description that this person gave of this guy with this Volkswagen allegedly talking to Diane, they don't match up. Very difficult. Once again, difficult. Like I'm going to say it again. You can see why this disappearance caught my attention and why I wanted to talk about it tonight. And so hopefully in 2026, we can make it an actual episode and talk to one of Diane's sisters, because they have done media over the years. So I'm hopeful we can track one of them down and, try to iron some of these things out. So this guy has never been identified. This particular Volkswagen has never been located. And this is certainly perplexing, given that Hawaii, of course, it's an island. And I'm not even sure if this happened on the Hawaii, the big island, or was it on Oahu? I'm not even sure. Anyway, they're all islands. I mean, where can the car go? This is kind of like when I've talked about the Sherry Mahan disappearance with the van with the skier on the side. What happened to that van? I realized maybe somebody said, oh, people saw my van, I have to get rid of it because I took Sherry. But what about anybody who could have seen the van before that day? I know there's a lot of rumors and everything, but that van has never been tracked down. So it's kind of the same thing with this Volkswagen. If it was so distinct and everything, why has it never been tracked down? I once again, I can understand. Oh, yes, I did something to Diane. Oh, somebody saw my Volkswagen. I got to get rid of it. I got to repaint it. I got to do this. I got to drive it off a cliff somewhere in Hawaii or whatever. But that's not going to fix the problem of the Volkswagen that guy was driving around for how long before he caused Diane's disappearance. Getting rid of the car really isn't going to do anything. This person has never been identified. And you should also know that the woman who was inside the dance studio never said anything about seeing Diane between 3 and 3:15. Didn't see her outside talking to any guy or anything. It seems like these two were like two ships passing in the night. They're in the same building, but they don't see each other. Now, you should also know that Diane had a boyfriend at the time. In fact, some years later, he was interviewed and said, really broke him up. And he was really in love with Diane. And it seems he had a good... it seems like he had a pretty good alibi, and it doesn't seem that he was suspected of causing Diane's disappearance at all. They couldn't come up with any reason that he would even be there to harm her. Nothing. But she did have a guy in her life, and I guess they had been an item for a few years. So this is tough. I mean, this is the kind of disappearance that I like to be challenged by these kinds. Of course, I'll feature any kind of disappearance on Unfound. But these are the ones that really, I think, test us, really challenge our knowledge, our experience, what we think we know about disappearances. Because, of course, I'm hoping Diane's disappearance is solved one of these days. Of course, I hope, that she's still alive 40 years later. I don't know what the odds are of that. But if it's going to get resolved, I want to be in a position to be correct about it. And so this is a challenge. Whereas, some of these others, even I could say this past Friday's with Brandy Crouches, certainly could be it was foul play. No facts disputing that. But I'm fairly sure she's in the woods out there somewhere, even though the police don't think so. I'm not saying I'm certainly interested. That's why, I talk to everybody. But I would not say that that is the kind of disappearance that, um, tests us. It's only going to test us if we find out that Brandy's still alive and she's in Alaska and has cleaned her act up. Now, that would certainly be, of course, I would hope that to be true. But that would certainly test us. Then we have to start working our way back. Well, how did that happen? But otherwise, I think I'm pretty secure in the fact, unfortunately, very sadly, that she is deceased and out those woods somewhere. Whereas something like Diane's here, how is it that somebody in the same building didn't see her leave? How is it that somebody in the same building didn't see anybody else in the building if she did get attacked or something? How is it that we have a witness seeing her walk down the street, but then her keys and her purse are found back at the building? How is it that a witness saw her outside talking to a guy that they have a good description of with a unique car, but neither he nor the car have been found and been identified all these 40 years later? Tough. So as I, to move on to this, how I usually do this. Now, the next part I usually goes, well, what would be helpful? What information is not out there publicly, at least that I could find in the time it took me to put this all together? What information would be helpful in having a clearer picture of, other than just knowing what happened? What additional information would be helpful? To me, where my mind goes first is, well, what kind of dance class was she having? I'm guessing it was probably an hour long. So from 2 to 3, what kind of dance class was this? Was it kids? Of course, it's during the summer, so it's a decent chance it was a class for kids or young adults or something. But maybe it was a class for adults. Maybe it was a class of all adult men. It happens. Like I said, I worked in entertainment in Las Vegas. Never took any dance classes, but there were dance classes, dance studios there where men would be a majority of the people taking that class. There are a lot of male dancers, a lot of different shows, and I know, that do that. So I'd want to know more about this class. In addition, I would want to know more about those other stores that are connected to that dance studio. They all share like a wall. Like I said, like a strip mall. You go into a strip mall and you got like the tax office next to the hair salon, next to a UPS store, next to a pet store. They all share the same walls. They all have their own front doors, but they all share interior walls. This is kind of the same situation. I would want to know more about those other businesses that are there, because they would have second floors, and I'd start wondering, well, can you access that dance studio on the second floor from one of those other businesses? I'd want to know that. I'd also want to know what was going on in Diane's life. What was she saying to her boyfriend? If her boyfriend seemed to be free and clear of all this, what was she saying to him? She saying anything about being stalked? We have this photographer guy. It seems like something, but once again, he's never been charged. Failed a polygraph. That doesn't mean anything to me. What was she saying about all this, about working there? It seems that she, I guess she could still be having problems with somebody there and still show up. And it very well could be, if she was having problems with somebody there, maybe she felt a certain security because some other person was in the dance studio too, even if it were downstairs. But would certainly want to know more about that. And also want to know, well, what was her usual schedule? Did she normally have that class on that day at that time? Was there anything unusual about that day compared to any other day? For example, maybe she wasn't the one who usually taught that class. Maybe she was substituting for somebody. These would all be items that are helpful. Certainly. And, like I said, maybe we need to know a little bit more about her car, but it just seems to me that the car was sitting out there and, it wasn't disturbed at all. It didn't look like she ever went out there. I will say again, I don't think that her purse and keys were in the car. I think they were inside. So this does give the impression, if we're to think an abduction scenario, that somehow somebody was there and managed to get her out of the second floor without anybody noticing. And you may say, well, how do you know the guy on the parking lot? Well, I'm thinking if she was done upstairs, wouldn't she have come downstairs with her purse and her keys? Would she really come downstairs and leave those items up there just sitting there, so she'd have to go back upstairs again and then come back down? It seems unlikely. So it's really tough to analyze because you just have a hard time believing that whether it was this photographer or somebody off the street or a homeless person or whatever else, somebody could just go in there, go up to the second floor, take her. Nobody see anything, nobody hear anything, even though there's somebody there, and this is where it goes to my analysis. Not much has changed, as best as I can tell, since 1985. The building still looks very much, even though the other stores and things might have changed, it's still very much the same building. This is a busy area. This isn't some standalone little dance studio out in the middle of nowhere. This is on a busy street. It's on like the main street of this town in Hawaii. The parking lot is in the back. It's a pretty big parking lot if it's the same from 1985. Pretty big back parking lot where it seems both employees and customers or dance clients or, dance students could all park back there. The parents could wait for their kids back there. And given that her keys and her purse were in the building, it doesn't seem like she was going out to her car and got abducted. Unless somebody abducted her, then took the keys and the purse back in. That really is tough. And then I want to reiterate that we only have 15 minutes for all of this to happen. I guess there was no class right after that. And it was very clear that when the friends showed up at 3:15 and they couldn't find her, the search started fairly quickly. Nothing. So it's a busy area. There are other businesses in this huge building. Like I said, it's a strip mall type of situation. Nobody heard anything. It seems there were witnesses, but I would say that the witness statements are contradictory. And you know how I feel about that. Once you get to that point, I think you have to throw it all out. Hello, Arkansas. Emmy, that is Emily, Assistant Emily. Hello, Emily. How are you tonight? Good to see you. It's been a while in the live show. Cranky says, Rockford, oh, cool. This isn't 1905 all over again for the Bears, but it's looking better than many years past. Yeah. Yeah, your Bears barely beat my Steelers. Tough game. Brian says she could have willingly went to meet this guy after class, then got abducted. She could have, Brian. It's just hard to understand. Let's say that the sighting of her talking to the guy with the Volkswagen is true. Why did she come downstairs without her purse and her keys when she knew that her friends were going to be there in a few minutes? I'm not saying it's impossible. Certainly it is possible. It's certainly physically possible. But what are the odds that she would do that? And Brian's also asking, nobody heard anything? Nope. Not that anything that I could find. Not, of course, in the Charlie Project write-up, nothing in the news account starting in I mean, this got a lot of attention, as you would imagine. Nobody saw it, like I said, except for the witnesses. Nobody I guess what I'm saying is nobody saw anything of a foul play nature, of a violent nature, like her being dragged away. They certainly saw her. That's what they say anyway. But nothing that was unusual. But we might even doubt those stories. Rockford, I also want to know a routine if she followed it that day. Once again, yeah. Was she supposed to be there that day? Was somebody else supposed to teach that class? Yeah, routine, absolutely. So once again, busy area. It's also clear to me that if it's the way it is back in 1985, you could not park in front of the building. The front of the building, it opened up to a sidewalk that was in the street. There was no parking there. So it wasn't like somebody could like hurriedly pull up there and park right in the middle of the street. That couldn't happen. If somebody abducted her, the person had to park in the back. Where there are all these other cars and things. And like I said, there are other people, businesses. I would also say if someone showed up to abduct her, knowing she was there, this really does seem risky and brash. This is a lot different than a known scenario of Jodi Huisentruit. Certainly what that person or people did way back in 1995, a little risky. But it was at 4 a.m. It's in Iowa. It's dark. This person or people certainly knew Jodi's routine. They knew, even though she was late that morning, that she seemingly was eventually going to come out. That doesn't come anywhere close to somebody showing up in broad daylight, parking their car in the back, and really thinking that they're going to take her out of there without anybody seeing. Like I said, risky, brash. Also, how do we square somebody seeing her outside with blood being in the bathroom? It's hard to do that. In addition, we only have 15 minutes. Somebody, injured her to the point of her bleeding, but there was no blood found, like on the steps down to the first floor. And somebody in 15 minutes also had the time to clean that all up. Once again, seems unlikely. How do we square somebody being in the building with blood being in the bathroom? How do we square somebody being in the building and nobody else seeing this person? How do we square somebody harming her, getting bloodied, and then the person goes back into the building? Once again, if there's blood, meaning the person who did this also got bloodied, somebody just walked right out of that building and nobody noticed blood on that person. No blood seemingly was found on the outside of the bathroom. Somebody got her out of the building during the day from the second floor with somebody else in the building. All very, very, very difficult to understand. To the point that I would say that there is something within all of this that isn't right. I don't know what that is. It's just and until I would be able to talk to one of her sisters who've done media accounts and have done interviews, but of course those interviews, in the paper are not as precise as what I would do to try to iron some of these things out. There's something within all of this that is wrong. Is it, let's put it this way. This would be a lot clearer instantly if we were to be told, well, wait a minute. Her purse and keys weren't in the building. They were actually in her car. That would be a big difference. That would then mean that she did go out to her car and got abducted. And then when I'm thinking about that blood is kind of what I've said already. It's not Diane's blood. It's somebody else's blood. It's a dance studio. Like I said, people falling over, people hitting their noses, people getting scratched, people this, people that. Dancing can be dangerous. And given that over the past almost 40 years, it's never been said, yes, this is Diane's blood, we have to be very open to the idea that it's not Diane's blood. And so If just something as simple as the keys and the purse being in her car instead of the building, or at least maybe being on the first floor, changes things quite a bit. I'm inclined to not believe these sightings. Yeah, that maybe is not surprising to any of you at all. You know how I feel about this stuff. It seems unlikely to me that wherever her keys and purse were, that she would walk down the street without them. It also seems unlikely to me that she would be outside talking to some guy with her purse and keys inside the building. It just seems unlikely. So I think that these sightings are not true. I think all the blood stuff is a red herring. I think it's probably gotten them off on the wrong tangent. Now, you may be right about now asking me, was it possible that after that dance studio, it's like, the heck with this, I'm leaving my life, or she's suicidal or something? There are no facts to dispute that. And, it's as much as you want to dismiss it, we just have too many stories of people doing that. I'm not saying I believe that for this disappearance. To think that, she would think, once again, getting into her head, if we can be allowed to do that for a moment. Okay, I'm feeling like leaving my life today, and this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm just going to leave this building and walk down the street. Now, of course, there was a sighting of her, if we want to believe it. But how far does she have to go? Maybe down to the bus stop, wherever that was, if they even have public transportation there. I'm not inclined to believe that either. Let's see what everybody. All right, yeah, me too, Emily. Brian says, very bizarre case, Rockford. I was thinking about how following the same routine every day can be dangerous, but then it's funny you mentioned Husentraut, who did not. One unusual aspect of her case is she slept in, and somebody really, 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 really wanted to attack Jody that day. Somebody was really obsessed. This is why I continue to insist it was somebody who became infatuated with her being on TV. I will continue to say that until there are facts to say otherwise. Brian, were her purse and keys not locked up and out in the open? The way I read what it was put, they were in the building. They were upstairs in the dance studio on the second floor. That's the way I read it. Nowhere did I see that they were in the car. So then this is once again a big challenge, but this is why I'm here. This is why I want to be the best at this. So what happened? What happened to her? I really don't think she got abducted from the second floor. It seems extraordinarily brash to do that. To say, you know what? I have an obsession with Diane Suzuki. I've tried to get her go out on a date. She has a boyfriend. She's blown me off. So I'm going to go up to the second floor where she has that dance class. And once it's over, I'm going to abduct her. It seems outrageously unlikely because once again, this person is looking to get away with it. This is probably a poor way to try to do that, especially considering that there was another woman in the building. I think that somebody was waiting first, maybe somebody who didn't know that, her friends were going to be coming in 15 minutes. I'm guessing that she really did get abducted in the parking lot. And I know I'm I don't know if this is cheating or not. I'm guessing that the only way this all makes sense, that comes into a thing that we can put within the thick part of the bell curve, is if her purse and keys were not in the building. That maybe they were out in the parking lot and somebody found them out there and brought them inside or something like that. In contrast to her leaving them there and her getting attacked and nobody heard anything, nobody saw anything. I mean, even if she got knocked out, and she was not that big of a woman. I think she was like 5 feet tall or something. But even so, somebody has to carry her, carry down the steps. Nobody saw her. I'll be back. All right, D. Thank you. Brian, I think someone in the parking lot took her either by force or trickery. Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to have to go to. I think the blood is a red herring. And I'm open to the idea that, yes, the keys and the purse ended up in the building, but maybe because somebody found them outside and brought them inside. Now, does that mean that this is this photographer guy just because he didn't pass a polygraph? Not necessarily. I would think that if it was something like that, that it's just too straightforward. I think that even though I don't have the highest opinion of police when it comes to disappearances, I think this is one that they could have put together pretty quickly. That they didn't, that this photographer guy was never charged with anything, leads me to believe probably it was not him. It was not he. And it was somebody else. Who that could be, I don't know. So I think what happened was she had her class. She knew her friends were coming. Maybe she needed to bring things, some things down to her car or whatever. She gets out there. She gets attacked. The keys and the purse maybe are on the top of her car, something she put them there or whatever. Somebody attacked her, gets taken away, and then somebody else comes along and says, oh my goodness, Diane left her keys and her purse on top of her car. How'd she do that? And they bring it inside, and that's how this all happened. It's the best I can do. And as you could, and I don't know if I'd put any more than $1 on this. This is why I really hope that we can feature this disappearance in 2026 so we can sort some of these things out with her sister who has had, one of her sisters who has had 40 years to think about this and maybe straighten some of these things out. And if for no other reason, I would like to feature a disappearance from Hawaii. I want to get to all 50 states. Brian says her purse and keys could have been in a locker locked up. They do have those things at dance studios, Brian. You're right. Still hard to understand why she didn't go get those things and how she didn't get those things and, if somebody abducted her, would she go outside without getting those things? Seems unlikely. Rockford, abduction is in play, but I think would only need a few facts to move us in the direction of walk-off. Curious about the victimology and hope you can do an interview. Me too. Like I said, she has multiple sisters. I think they're all still alive. They've done media, but they have not done any recent media. Maybe they've just kind of given up. Maybe they burnt out. Maybe they moved on with their lives. We know all of these things happen. But that is the disappearance of Diane Suzuki. It's one of those things where it just doesn't seem like somebody could disappear under the situation that existed that day, but she did. And it was a situation that if she got abducted, all of it would be totally, totally, totally out of the kidnapper's control. All of it. Whether somebody's in the building or not, second floor or not, busy area or not, where the parking lot is or not, all out of an abductor's control And still, if we're to believe there was an abduction, somebody successfully did this. The timing just, I guess, had to be absolutely right. Maybe we could compare it to, man, I forget the young woman's name, but the young woman was at her father's birthday and she went to Home Depot or something. And did this happen when she was going in or coming out? But there was a guy there who was having a very, very bad day. He was married, was on the outs with his wife. He shows up in that parking lot. The two don't know each other, and just out of nowhere, he abducts her and kills her. Forget the young woman's name at this point. I can remember that being a Dateline episode like 20 years ago or something. And they finally did catch him, and it was like, why did this even have to happen? The two did not know each other. It was just bad luck that she was in that spot. That this guy just totally lost his mind. Took her, I think, raped her and killed her. And the only way they were able to catch him is because there was video camera pointed out into the parking lot where it happened. So maybe we're talking about that. But of course, with that woman's case, I don't think she left her purse and her keys behind. So maybe one of you can look that up and see what murder and he dumped her, and then and he didn't even, I think once they tracked him down, he didn't even try to say he didn't do it. He actually, I think, led them to her, where her body was and everything. Just horrible. So maybe that's what we're talking about here. Some just completely random thing. Kelsey Smith, Rockford, I think you're right. I think that is the name. So Diane goes out to her car to do whatever. Just someone randomly comes along. Her, she places the keys and, they're still there. And then somebody thinks, oh, this woman from the dance studio left her purse and keys there. What the heck's she doing? Brings them back inside, and maybe nobody realized the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. I will do my best to try to cover it in 2026. I promise you. All right, let's go on to this. I want to talk about this crash. Greg Biffle, NASCAR driver, who got killed this past week along with his wife, their children, along with, I think, 3 other people in a private jet. Happened in North Carolina, and they took off. It was seemingly a pretty decent day for flying, although maybe the clouds were low. And it seems that the jet had a problem as soon as it got off the ground. It got up to maybe 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, which in jet terms, of course, is nothing. And it seems that, and we're still unclear on how many pilots, were in there. Greg had his pilot's license. Was he at the controls, or was he the co-pilot? That is still unclear. They have a cockpit voice recorder. There was no recorder for all of the instruments and everything, but there was a cockpit voice recorder that they've recovered, and they'll get information. So they're certainly going to know who the pilot was there a co-pilot, all of that, but we don't know. So jet takes off seemingly with no problem, but right away, whoever was flying realized, hey, something isn't right here. They flew out. They were only in the air for 10 minutes. They flew down straight ahead, and then they looped back around. And as they were doing the final turn to line up with the runway, they might have been too slow, but they were certainly too low. And they clipped some trees, hit the fence that bordered the airport, right into the ground. And there's video out there. You can see it, that the plane just it turns into a fireball and rolls down. And you can certainly understand why nobody got killed. So the cause of the wreck, really of course, we don't know what exactly happened, but they were too low, trying to land a plane in which there was something wrong with the plane. Something. They don't know yet. They were too low, hit short of the runway, hit too hard. and everybody got killed. So what are we to think about this? First of all, as many people have written since this happened, a lot of race car drivers have been killed in aviation accidents. Of course, Jack Roush, very, very famous car guy, still alive, but he survived 2 plane crashes. But in fact, he lost an eye in the second one, in which he was the pilot. I remember when that happened. But we had Alan Kulwicki, who was NASCAR champion in 1993. He did not get to defend his title the next year. He died in a plane crash. Davey Allison, son of Bobby Allison, very famous driver. Davey Allison crashed. He was piloting a helicopter and crashed it, landing at a speedway, and he got killed. I think the guy was with him lived, but he got killed. And there are my favorite NASCAR driver, Mark Martin, his father, his stepmother, and I think his sister got killed in a plane crash many years ago. And the reason this is, a lot of these drivers take jets. A lot of them have access to private jets. It's no different than like golfers. Of course, Payne Stewart, golfer, got killed in a plane crash, a very well-known one here in the United States. But a lot of these drivers spend a lot of time in jets going from track to track and doing things like that. So it raises the odds that they would get killed in a crash. And frankly, private jets or propeller planes, as much as aviation is a safe way to fly or safe way to travel, private jets and little propeller planes are not as safe as commercial aviation. It's not even close. Still safer than getting in your car every day. But, so what, hello, well, there's Joyce Rivatuza. Everybody say hi to Joyce, former guest of Unfound, one of my favorite guests of all time, Joyce Rivatuza. Everybody say hi to Joyce, because she is in the chat tonight. But so what to think about Greg's crash and the killing of his family and these other people? They're going to take a look at the engines. Like I said, it seems they had a problem shortly after taking off. Some problem that did not show itself while they were on the ground. It seems that the jet accelerated fine up to, takeoff speed, whatever, how many miles an hour, over 100 miles an hour. It seemed it did that fine, but as soon as it got into the air, something was wrong. Here are some possibilities. First of all, there is a device on all planes, jets anyway, called pitot tubes, P-I-T-O-T, that if there is something wrong with them, if they're not functioning correctly, if there's these little things that you can put over, if you wash the jet or to protect them, there is these covers that go over them. If you take off in a plane without those covers being off, it's going to throw all of your instruments off. The plane is still flyable. And certainly it's flyable if you can see, if you're not in the clouds or anything, you can see, okay, we're at this altitude. All of our instruments are all messed up. We're going to be able to make it back to the airport. But Kathleen and Largo, I will try to fit it in. Thank you, Kathleen. I'll do what I can. I am a little bit familiar with it, given that I live in this area. Sure, no problem, Kathleen. Thank you. So that's one issue. And this is not a problem that would show itself on the ground. But as soon as you get off the ground, the instruments don't know, these things are on the outside of the plane, can't gauge anything, and so your instruments don't make any sense. Now, what would be hard to understand, though, is that under those conditions, the plane should still be flyable, at least to get it back to the runway. Of course, they didn't make it back to the runway. You should also know this is what happened with the Air France flight. Remember that Air France flight that crashed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Took a while to find, from many years ago. That's what happened on that plane, in that they were up in icing conditions. These little sensors on the outside of the plane started freezing up. Well, this is a known thing. It shouldn't have affected the one pilot like it did, but they panicked. When the instruments started going all they're trained for this. This one particular pilot froze up. And essentially, he was the cause of that plane dropping from like 35,000 feet and killing everybody from 35,000 feet. It was a panic situation. It was at night. But this is a well-known phenomenon that probably happens in jets all the time. And passengers don't even know it. But that's what happened. But that's a totally different situation, this one. But it's something to consider. That these little things, these sensors on the outside of the jet, there was something wrong with them. And for some reason, the pilot or pilots realized there was a problem, but just didn't handle it 100% correctly. Another possibility, and this has happened before. I've never flown in a private jet. Maybe if I hit Powerball tonight, which is going to be drawn in a half hour, maybe I'll get that opportunity. But a lot of these private jets have storage in front of the pilot. So some of these private jets actually have a trunk at the front of the jet. So you're sitting there, you're the pilot, where there's a little area between your cockpit and the nose where the radar is. That's like a little trunk where you can put luggage. And this particular private jet had that. Well, there are documented crashes. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten killed, but there are documented crashes where you put luggage in it at the front, you close those doors up, the jet takes off, and one of those doors isn't secure. And what happens? It opens, and because of the wind, the air, you're going 150 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour, it rips off and goes into one of the engines. And so they're going to be taking a long look at this as well. Did it take off? And as soon as they took off, it reached 150, 200 miles an hour as it was climbing into the air. And one of those doors, or maybe both of them, ripped off and at least hit one of the engines. Of course, that would be a big problem. Now, one of those jets can still be flown with one engine, but it very well could be both engines got hit. But even so, with one engine, you have to follow the proper procedures. This is something that pilots should be prepared for. They should practice that as best as you can, of course, without killing yourself. If you're taking lessons or whatever else. But if it happens and you're not expecting it, and of course, who would expect that? You might panic. And so it very well could be that one of these doors flew off, hit one of the engines, and they're kind of limping around to get back. And the problem you have with a plane that has jets on both sides, and one engine isn't working, is that the jet really wants to go in one direction. In fact, it doesn't want to fly straight. And in fact, it wants to, get off its axis. It wants to, one wing wants to go up and the other wing wants to go down. It's what they call asymmetric thrust. And that is a situation that can get out of hand very quickly. You should be able to handle it. And of course, if you don't know, this is, in commercial aviation, I'm not saying it's happening all the time, but we got a lot of jets up in the air every day and they are having engine problems, and those jets land just fine. Commercial jets. But private jet, you might have a pilot with not as much experience. Of course, in this situation, they only got up to 1,000, 1,500 feet. Not a lot of altitude to play with. Remember, it's not the fall that kills people. It's the sudden stop at the end. And so they're going to be taking a look at that. Of course, the real telltale sign will be if they're at the wreck site and one of those doors is missing, they can't find it at the wreck, and they of course have radar of where the plane was. They start following that path, going out and they find a door from the front of the plane somewhere out, like in the woods or something. That'll certainly be a telltale sign that that's what happened. Still, even if that happened, I'm not sure that this wreck should have happened. Now, if both engines went out, but I don't think if both engines went out, they would not have been able to stay in the air for 10 minutes. More likely is one engine went out and they were limping back and just ran out of altitude and ran out of speed with one engine. So that's something else. And of course, after that, it gets a little more obscure. Could it be bad fuel? Could there just have been a bad engine itself, not having to do with anything hitting it? Was there something else that was mechanically wrong with the plane that did not expose itself until they were in the air? To me, it starts getting unlikely after, the pitot tube explanation or one of these doors flying off. It gets somewhat a little unlikely. But that's what happened. And, the crash, very sad. And, D, Kathleen, can I get more info? Phew, I made it. Hello, love the Santa hat. Hello, the cake. What's going on? Yeah, thank you for the compliment on the hat. It's the Christmas edition. So Greg Biffle, very sad. And if you don't know, on the jet, they knew they were in trouble. It's public knowledge that I think his wife texted her mother. Remember, they're only 1,000 feet in the air, of course, so you can still get cell phone service. She texted her mother saying they're in trouble. So they knew. She knew something wasn't right. And I think there was another text, maybe from her, maybe from somebody else on the plane, to somebody that said emergency landing. So everybody on that plane knew it wasn't good. I can't imagine it. I know I'm joking around about Powerball tonight. I do have my tickets. Hopefully you have your numbers too. I wish you all the luck in the world. If I can't win it, I hope one of you does. But I will be honest with you that should I ever have enough money to be able to fly private jets, I probably won't. If I want to go see the world with my millions and everything, I'll probably just fly commercial and fly upper first class. It's a lot safer. I know private jets, look at us in our private jet, and we get the, really personal, and we don't have to hang out with the, the regular people and everything else. I'm not feeling it. Just like I would never go up in a propeller plane. You're not getting me on a private jet either. If I hit Powerball tonight and I want to go places, I am perfectly fine flying first class commercial. I don't mind hanging out with everybody else. Fine by me. Hey, be friendly to everybody. Fine by me. Fine by me. Just too many weird stories and crashes. Too many things that are avoidable. And, private jets and these things, they just don't have as much oversight as you do with commercial aviation. You just don't. So let me get to of course, I still want to get to this Brown University shooting. But Kathleen asked me, Ed, will you have a few minutes tonight to give your thoughts on the missing man with dementia in Largo? Such an extensive search, they can't find him. And also the missing boaters in Southwest Florida. Yeah, I've seen both of these stories. The problem, I will try to be quick about this, Kathleen, but also be accurate. Regarding the man with dementia, Kathleen, if you've been following Unfound for any length of time or watching this live show, my opinion of searches is very poor. I have a very poor opinion of searches. Certainly, people have to go out and look. But a lot of times those searches, it doesn't matter if it's however old he was with dementia. It doesn't matter if it's a 13-year-old girl. It doesn't matter if it's a 35-year-old man with a meth addiction. It doesn't matter. That searches oftentimes are unsuccessful. So we should never jump to the conclusion that, we didn't find that guy, so somebody must have picked him up. Never think that. I'm not saying it couldn't have happened, but the stats on this are very, very clear. That it is very unlikely that these people get picked up by anybody. I would have to go, I'm guessing, given that I live in this county, that I've driven past that area at least once. I suppose I could go over there and check it out for myself. The problem you have, Kathleen, we have all these little canals, both man-made and natural, that run all throughout this county. And if you've ever flown into, maybe not the Tampa airport, but the Clearwater airport, the St. Pete airport that's over here in Pinellas County, you have a bunch of little lakes and little things that just look like puddles from the air. Of course, you have alligators and all of these things. Kathleen, it's all in play. It's very sad. It's very scary. But it's all in play. You also have to realize that, with dementia, yes, this man's mind isn't as healthy as it used to be. But his body still could be, meaning he could probably walk for quite a ways and not know what he's doing. And you'd think that people would see him. Maybe, maybe not. People are in their own little worlds. So he's out there somewhere. Unfortunately, he's probably deceased. I think there's still a chance he could still be alive. Of course, the weather has been pretty nice here. We don't have to worry about hypothermia or anything. And the odds have been being taken advantage of or anything, once again, very, very low. But it's probably going to be bad news. Probably. So that's his best insight I can do with that. The cake. Brian, Ed, and everywhere be safe. Got to go. All right, Brian, good seeing you tonight. Thank you for making some time. Kathleen, as far as, it's very weird. Of course, just did the revisitation episode of with that, because of the 4 men who survived out in the Gulf, like 20 miles straight out that direction, right out there, 20 miles away. But I was up in Pennsylvania. And now we have this uncle and a nephew, some guy in his 50s, some guy in his 30s. The boat found, they're not. What to think? The weather hasn't been that bad. So I would have a tough time blaming the weather. Is this a Jeff Wondich situation with like I said, we just featured, the revisitation. The boat's floating. The boat didn't sink. As far as I can tell, the boat looked in good condition. I don't know. Did they decide to go for a swim and the boat drifted away? Did one of them jump into the water and started having some sort of physical problem, wasn't able to swim, maybe had a heart attack or something like that, and the other one jumped into the water to save that guy, and once again, the boat got away? Possible. Is it possible that they're out there fishing and some other boat came along and kidnapped them or something, if that happened, that would be as rare could be. The issue is that I don't know anything about these guys other than their ages and what they look like. Would, to get into any sort of other kinds of scenarios, would certainly have to know more about them. How, what kind of fishing experience did they have? What kind of boating experience did they have? What was the condition of the boat? What was on board? Was there anything missing on board? We just need a lot more information. But what I'm inclined to think is something that I already said. Were they out there? Did one of them fall into the water by accident? Once again, there's no way. The weather, like I said, the weather's been beautiful. There's no way they were out there and it was like these waves and they got thrown off. That did not happen. But accidents happen. A guy falls backwards into the water. Maybe he hits his head or something. Is unconscious. Of course, the other guy has to jump into the water to save him. The boat drifts away and, the current is so, of course, the guy who's still conscious, has the other guy, can't leave the other guy, but doesn't want to let the boat get away. It's like you're between a rock and a hard place. That's probably my best guess. Because I just, unless they're, I don't know what kind of guys they were, uncle and his nephew, were they out there doing drugs or something? I don't know anything about them. So, Kathleen, that's the best I can do. But this is most likely an accident situation. A very unusual accident situation, certainly because the boat is still afloat and they're not there. Usually when you run into a situation, it's like the four guys that survived. The boat is overturned and they're like hanging on for dear life. Something like that. The boat was running at 5K when they found it. That's the weird thing. They were both lawyers. Thanks, Ed. I'd appreciate. Was running at 5K, so 5 kilometers an hour or 5 miles an hour or what? Was running at 5K. What does that mean? Kathleen, 5K. 5 miles an hour, 5 kilometers an hour, 5 kilometers an hour, 5 knots. 5 knots would be what? 6 miles an hour, not quite 6 miles an hour. I forget how that all breaks down. Not very fast. Probably an accident. Probably one guy fell in, the other guy jumped in after him, didn't turn the boat off. It's freak. And I will acknowledge that freaky things can happen out there. And maybe that's even what happened with the Marco Island 3, but just sounds like an accident. Very fortunate one. That doesn't mean they still couldn't be alive, but it depends. The water this time of year, it's not cold, but you could get hypothermia eventually. I'm not, being out here, there's not many people on the beach right now anyway. Having watched the last several days since I got back from Pennsylvania, but not many people going in the water. Hi, Ed. Hat looks great. So festive. Made it time to say Merry Christmas. Hello, MT, and the thumbs up. We'll catch up with the replay tomorrow. Okay, MT. So that's the best I can do with that, Kathleen. Sounds like an accident. All right, this Brown University shooting. Of course, the guy who they believe did it ended up committing suicide. He went to the Brown campus, shot it up, it injured several people, killed 2 students. Some people were thinking this was politically motivated because the girl that got killed was in, some student Republican Party student group there, something like that. That certainly is nothing. This is certainly a guy who had revenge on his mind. It's at one point in his life, it does seem that he was hot stuff, but it also seems that he had some mental health issues and never reached his full potential. And he was bitter about that, maybe thinking it was others were to blame. So that's why he went to Brown University and just seemingly randomly shot it up. And then on top of that, he went down to near the MIT campus, not on the campus, but there was a professor there, a doctor of education there. And this shooter, his name, I'm not going to get into his name, but the killer tracked this guy down who actually went to school with this guy and murdered him. And then the killer went to some storage unit, and that is where he shot himself to death. And I once again, I think this is mental health issues combined with revenge issues, bitterness issues, and paranoia issues, a lot of things put together. And I think especially with the shooting of the MIT professor, in that they had actually gone to school together, and the killer was actually at the top of his class. This professor was like under him. And then it was this underling, at least while they were in school, who ended up being a professor at MIT. And this guy didn't end up being much anything, mainly, I guess, because of his mental health issues, other issues that he had. But what actually caught my eye, and I think this is something something that I posted in the group. I don't know how many people agreed with me, but they had a video of the guy walking away from the Brown University shootings. And I said, man, that guy really does kind of walk like the killer in the Missy Beavers video. Many of you know, of course, her murder is still unsolved. She was the yoga instructor who was holding classes, usually held them at that church in Midlothian, Texas. She shows up there that morning. Well, already somebody had broken into the church and was going around trying to open doors, breaking windows in police riot gear. And then this person noticed, or maybe it was a target, we still don't know, and went in and then eventually killed Missy Beavers. If you watch that video again, and I did watch it trying to compare, it's not exactly the same. But the way this Brown University killer walked and the way that person walked in the Missy Beavers video, kind of similar. I would say that the Missy Beavers killer is more exaggerated than the Brown University killer, but it's along the same lines with kind of this hobbling thing with the right foot kind of pointed out to the side. And of course, one of the big questions, other than was Missy Beavers targeted, did somebody know she was going to be there that morning? Thus, this person broke in, tried to make it look like a break-in, interrupted when really Missy was targeted. Or was it really a break-in? The killer didn't know that Missy in this yoga class was going to be there, and then felt this person had to kill Missy because, of course, she was going to be a witness to the whole thing. It is still very, very unclear. And everybody has their own opinions, and I don't know what the police down there think. I have no idea. Maybe they don't even know. But the other issue has been, well, was the killer of Missy Beavers a woman or a man? And everybody has tried to dissect how this killer is moving and using the hammer and all these different tools. And I think a lot of people have defaulted to being a woman because of the way the killer walked. Well, I think with this Brown University killer kind of walking similar, I think it shows that it could be a man in that video. I'm not saying that the Brown University shooter is also the person who killed Missy Beavers. That would certainly be something. I mean, if they were to show that this Brown University killer was in Midlothian, Texas when Missy Beavers got killed, that would be mind-blowing. But my point, at least tonight, is that just because Missy Beavers killer walks in a certain way, it doesn't make that killer a woman. And I have to tell you that I've always thought, pretty much always thought that it was a guy. And I think that the mistake that some people have made is that when we think guy, we think like adult. We think 20-something or 30-something. And of course, the killer for the Brown University shootings, he was almost 50. And I've thought that it was a guy who may be a little out of the range of what we usually think of when we come to guys who murder women. We usually think 20s and 30s. I think this guy could either be well into his 40s or his 50s, or even a guy, like a young guy who, kind of overweight in his teens. So I just wanted to point that out. You can go check it out for yourselves. Of course, here right here on YouTube, you can go and find the Missy Beavers video. And I know many YouTubers have really broken that video down. I haven't done it because I've talked about it, but I haven't broken down because really murder is not necessarily my thing. But you can look at that, and then you can also see how this Brown University killer walked and see if you see the similarity. Like I said, it's not the same, but kind of along the same kind of lines. And I think that's why I'll continue to argue that I think Missy Beavers' killer was a male. And I will even go as far to say I do not think that she was targeted. I think that this was some guy who broke in there actually looking for stuff and had to kill Missy because she would, of course, eventually maybe happen upon, him. If she got away, then he would get caught. That's what I'm going to stick to until I see evidence otherwise. Emily says, I'm anxious to start working on more missing persons cases. Make sure you all catch the next Unfound Now case. It's one with many questions. Yeah, Emily has provided me with the disappearance for the next Unfound Now that I'll surely be doing within the next week. Thank you for that, Emily. I like it when people make my job easy. Those people are very special to me. So what else do I want to remind all of you that the reference guide is now up and running. You can find the link in the discussion group. I don't know if I've made everything public and everything, but you can access it through the discussion group. There's a link there if you want to start messing around and doing your own research on all of Unfound's episode disappearance that have been covered. Like I said, it's the way I've figured out, oh yeah, we still haven't covered a disappearance from Connecticut, still haven't covered a disappearance from Hawaii. Really got to get on this. Also, didn't get to the Steve Pankey letter, really did not. I will read this part of it. When it says Steve's attorneys opening brief is 54 pages long. Twice the judge said the case is likely to be reversed on appeal. I was convicted on innuendo, not facts. The state star witness is dead, that being Steve's ex-wife. In 1 to 2 years, the Court of Appeals will decide. 5 state witnesses have died. Will there be a third trial? So it sounds to me like Steve is hopeful that he's going to be able to be tried again. At least that's what he says in this letter. Rockford, my trip to being around how many men around my age are not getting around very easily on their feet. Yeah, good thought on Beaver's killer profile. Thank you, Rockford. Yeah, a lot of people out there, guys in their 50s who have not taken care of themselves. And I have to tell you, I'm so happy every day that I can jump out of bed. No back problems, no neck problems, no knee problems, no hip problems, nothing. It's given that I played sports and I've lifted weights and everything else, played disc golf, which can be hard on your elbows and knees, that I can still do that is pretty nice. But yeah, hey, Rockford, we all know we have an overweight issue in the United States. But that's all I got. Like I have already stated, this Friday, Going to do update episode 22. I already put it all together. I haven't recorded it yet, but I already know all of the disappearances that are going to get mentioned. There are many. So be prepared for that. I'm guessing it's going to go probably a couple hours long. Also, we'll kind of give a rundown of how I look back at the year 2025 for Unfound and how we got started and how we ended and what progress did we make. I will do that all in the recording that you will hear on Friday. That's all I got. That was the Christmas edition, and if only for me wearing a Santa hat. Thank you all for making the time. I hope you all have great Christmases. Not sure if I'm getting together with anybody. Maybe I'll see my brother Brian in a couple days, or not sure. But I hope it's all fantastic for you. Get out there, go see all the Christmas lights around, get some hot chocolate, get in the car with your families, drive around, and do that. I love that myself. Listen to a lot of Christmas music. Watch A Christmas Story. Watch Christmas Vacation. Watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Watch Charlie Brown Christmas. Do it all. And Charlie, say hi to the boys for me. I hope you all have a nice Christmas out there in Colorado. Keep your heads on swivels. Do not ruin your family's Christmas and New Year's holidays by going missing. And guess what? We're going to do this all again next Monday. Good night.